The Top Floor Please podcast, where women in leadership rise together. I'm your host, Melissa McCormick, executive coach and founder of the Grace and Salt Leadership Academy. This is your space to find clarity, grow in confidence, and lead with bold authenticity. Whether you're navigating the boardroom, building your team, or stepping into new territory, you're not alone. Let's talk real challenges, real growth, and real leadership because the top floor isn't just a place, it's a mindset. Alrighty then, let's get started. All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Top Floor Please podcast. I am your host, Melissa McCormick, and I'm super excited that you're here today because today we're going to be talking all about performance reviews, which I know is your favorite topic. But it's that time of year. So this is December, and we should be preparing for our performance reviews that typically you have start of the first year. So if you don't, like some companies go by anniversary date, other companies go by calendar or a consistent time frame. But if you don't start, if you don't have your performance reviews in January, that's okay. This still is relevant for you because you will then be proactive and be ahead of the game. All right, so I'm just gonna have a drink here and we will get started. Okay, so let's see. Looking at my notes here, there are generally two types of leaders in the world when it comes to performance review. You've got the boss or the leader who values that process, right? They're the ones that let me back up for a second. Depending on your performance review process, so some companies use, it's an automated, not really automated, but it's a electronic version where it could be ADP or it could be Paylocity or whatever it might be, but you have a portal that you're going to go into, and there your objectives are there and competencies or skills are there as well. And so typically the employee is going to rate themselves first and then release that to the employer, the boss, not the owner, or depending on where you are in the pecking order of the organization. But then the boss is going to then rate you and release those to you. And then you two sit down together, talk about where the gaps are, what was right, what went right, what went wrong, all of those kinds of things. It becomes a development conversation. And then, everybody agrees on it and it's electronically signed. And we, head out into the next year, setting our goals for that next year. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is the paper version, which has been around since the beginning of time. And it's the same type of process, or it should be the same type of process. But so what I have to talk about today is kind of both of those scenarios. It's just that my hope is that in your organization, you actually sit down and have a conversation, because I have found in my experience that there are two types of bosses and this is how the two ways, the basic two ways of how they manage performance reviews. And so you've got that one boss or that one leader who respects the process and goes through, and releases it to the employee. The employee is involved in it as well and believes in the whole process. And so they've rated themselves on not only their goals, but also on their competencies. They release it and send it to the boss. The boss takes a look at it, puts in their comments, sends it back. We actually sit down and have a conversation, a very constructive conversation about development, where we've been, where we're going, and where we are. Then you've got, so that's your first kind of leader. Your second one is the leader who avoids it, right? That's the leader that they're uncomfortable with having this conversation. So, but HR is on my back, so I'm just going to release it. The employee is going to put theirs and I'm going to put my notes and I'm just going to sign it, and we're not even going to talk about it because I'm uncomfortable with it. I don't know what to say. I don't want to have a hard conversation. In fact, I don't even want to have the conversation. And so that gets a little bit, well, it's not ideal. Let me put it that way. It's not ideal. And so part of what I do then, I help clients figure that stuff out. Like I help teach and train and develop leaders so that they can manage conflict, so they can have those constructive conversations and they can coach versus avoiding and then frustrating the employee. Because some employees, honestly, they're like totally cool. I don't need to know how I'm doing. Just give me my raise or whatever, because they are uncomfortable with the conversation as well. But most aren't. Like most employees, when there is a performance review program, they want it to be conducted in in the right way. So we're going to talk about both types of leaders today. Um, and well, anyway, we're gonna talk about both types of leaders. So we're just gonna dig in. Okay, so if you're the leader who schedules the meeting, right? So that's right. First of all, I just want to thank you. Thank you very much for being that leader who is proactive and is on your toes and is the one who really embraces the performance review process. Because the performance review process shouldn't be so that you can catch your employee in doing something bad so you can document and then fire them. That is not that. Yes, is that part of the process if you've got a performance issue that isn't getting better? Sure. Yes, right. You've got, your PIPs, your performance improvement plans, all of that. Sure. But it's really not intended for that. It's really intended so that the boss and the employee sit down in a structured meeting and then it's documented so that we know, oh, this is where we were. This is how far we've come. Isn't that fantastic? And this is where we're going. It's all about goal setting. It's all about development. So thank you. Thank you. If you are the one that is preparing the for and scheduling the conversation. So just to elevate your review of the conversations, I've got three things that I want you to think about. One is I want you to prepare. I don't want you to wing it. Some people are like, I don't know. I mean, I've worked with this person for 20 years. It'll be fine. Like we know each other. We're friends. It'll be great. No. I want you to prepare every single time. Do not wing it. First of all, you owe it to the employee, respecting their time. And it is such a thing that makes people, the employees, when they are in this group or in this type of a discussion, they want to know. Like they do. They seriously want to know. They don't want you to go in it and wing it. And then you're like, okay, why did we sit down? Are we just going through the motions? Like you don't really care about everything that I've done, even if it's an employee that's seasoned and has been around for a long time, and maybe is going to retire in a couple years. So you don't end up having that development talk with them because they're going to retire. You still want to celebrate the contributions that they've made to the organization. You still want to do that. And there still may be areas that you want them to work on with regards to communication or initiative or whatever it might be when it comes to those competencies that your organization I'm trying to think of the word, but I want to say highlights, but that's not really the right word. But anyway, that your organization kind of has earmarked as the ones that you want to focus on as you're developing leaders at all levels. So the first one is just prepare. Do not wing it. Review their self-assessment, performance data, like review it. Provide specific examples if and look at the gaps. So let's, for example, say that the competency is collaboration, like teamwork, and they've rated themselves a 5 on a 5-point scale, 5 being absolutely rocking it, and 1 being you suck, right? Okay, so they've rated themselves a 5, and you're thinking, no, I'm thinking you meet expectations, but you definitely don't exceed it. It's a 3. Okay, so now you've got a gap here. They think they are a rock star at collaboration and teamwork, and you're saying, no, there's room for improvement. So why is that? Be prepared to say, this is why I think that. And they may or may not agree with you, but at least you can't say, well, just because, it was a 3 that day. You can't, no, 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 no. Come prepared with both recognition and realistic feedback and be specific because that builds trust. Then they know, because you can tell when somebody's just kind of They're uncomfortable with it. Maybe they didn't do all their homework, and so they're kind of stepping, beating around the bush, that kind of thing. You can tell when somebody else is not totally um, doesn't really have their ducks in a row when it comes to how they rated you. So first one is prepare. The second one is I want you to balance that grace and salt. So grace acknowledge that it is acknowledging that effort and their humanity, like their person, right? So then salt delivers the clarity and the direction. So a strong leader knows how to use both. So I want you to remember that grace, if you know their disc style, so for those of you who have followed me for a bit, you know that I'm a disc facilitator. So this is everything disc. So which is I'm certified through an organization called Wiley. So if you know the other person's disc style, and if you don't, you can Google it, contact me. I'll be more than happy to walk you through what all of this means, and if it fits for your organization, that would be amazing. But I want you to think about that. So let me give you an example. My husband is a C on the DISC scale. He's analytical, he wants details, all the things. He's a processor. I'm the complete opposite. So I don't really need that many details. I can think pretty fast, not as fast as I probably should be able to, but I don't need all the details. So in that situation, if you're me and you're a salesperson and you're a people person and you like stories and you're talking to somebody who is analytical and who processes and who might not be comfortable giving you context right away, then you need to give them space. Okay. So you need to give them space. And then you go into it with here's my message on why you think you're a five and I think you're a three. Here's why. And then you need to give them, if they're an analytical person, you need to give them the details. You need to give them specifics. You need to help them understand where you're coming from. Now, they may not understand it. They may not agree with you. Doesn't matter. You just owe it to speak in their language versus in your language because they're going to be really uncomfortable anyway and probably want to get out of the conversation as quickly as possible. So the second one is balancing grace and salt. So, for example, you could say this. So you've done an excellent job in leading the project. One area to strengthen is time management during peak deadlines. Okay. So you've done an excellent job leading the project. That's positive. One area to strengthen rather than saying one area of improvement or the one area that, you don't do so well. Instead of that, one area to strengthen is time management. Let's talk about that. Okay. Yeah, totally true. And then the last one is to make it a conversation, not a critique. So this is not the Spanish Inquisition. This is not, a police inquisition or anything, right? So how do you feel about your performance this past year? You start it like that. Or what do you need from me to be more successful next quarter? So it's not so much I'm clicking off the boxes. It's more of a dialogue and it's more out of interest and not form over function. I'm just doing this because HR told me I had to do this. No. Okay. So those were the top three for that leader who schedules the meeting, the one who goes through the process because you understand the value in it. So be prepared, do not wing it. Balance your grace and your salt, make it a conversation, not a critique. Okay, now if you're the boss, the leader who avoids the conversation, right? You just really are uncomfortable with it. I don't want to do it. I've known these people for so long, they don't even care. That's what you're telling yourself. That is wrong, by the way. They do care. So, and honestly, many leaders skip or rush performance reviews because we're all uncomfortable with it, right? Maybe they don't like the confrontation or they don't know how to give constructive feedback, or what if they ask a question, or maybe you're just not comfortable giving compliments. Maybe that's it, right? It's just uncomfortable. So we're just going to avoid it. We're going to go through the motions because HR says we have to. But that avoidance, that reduces the trust between the relationship. It tells your team that their growth doesn't matter as much as your comfort. I mean, you know, they're talking. They're talking behind the scenes. Absolutely. So here's how I want you to reframe this. I want you to be thinking about it this way. One, prepare emotionally, not just logistically. Like, don't prepare yourself emotionally. Now, anticipate what is it that they could say so that you're already ready for that conversation. If they don't bring it up, at least you're prepared, right? So ask yourself, why am I uncomfortable? Why does this situation make me uncomfortable? Is it because I don't want to hurt their feelings? Or is it because I didn't give feedback throughout the year? Either way, you need to own it and then commit to doing it differently the next time, right? So if you aren't that leader that periodically or often gives feedback, then maybe you should start doing that, because then the performance review is not going to be so hard, because it should never be a surprise, right? You know that. You've heard this before. The second way is I want you to add salt wrapped in grace. I talked about that the first section of this podcast. Add the truth or your message wrapped in grace. So you can be direct, but you can be kind. Remember, I told at some point, I think it was in previous podcasts, I don't think it was this one, but that's what grace and salt's all about. It's about that other person. So I know this feedback might be hard to hear, but my goal is to help you grow, not criticize. Okay, so just position it that way and um, see how it is received. So when people understand your intent, they can receive your message. Intent builds trust. Intent builds trust. And the last thing that I want to mention to you is this: pay attention to the communication style. So we talked about DISC. And if you know the DISC style of the other person. So I'm just going to walk through those really quickly. D styles, they value efficiency. They want you to get to the point. That's the person where they think that you're going to be like they're waiting for the shoe to drop. Is that what we say? Or pull the rug out from underneath them. Whatever the saying is, they're waiting for it. So they want you to start with that. Like, so if they're going to have a bad performance review, then you need to start with that. That is going to help relax them a little bit, because then they're going to know. Otherwise they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're not paying any attention to what you're saying, because they're waiting for the results. They want to hear the results first. So start with that. So get to the point. Eyes, like I'm an I, so they need encouragement and we need positive tone. So it doesn't mean, again, that you give me a pass if I'm not meeting your expectations, but I do need some kind of positivity in there. And then you can say, okay, well, here's a way to strengthen this skill. This is something that we need to work on and we should set goals around for the next year, that type of thing. Our S styles, they respond to empathy and reassurance. So they don't like, they want everything to be status, you just kind of, even Steven, and they don't like it if there's going to be change. They want to understand that before as we work through it. So they need to be sure that they're getting reassured, like, am I going to be fired? Right? So that may be where their mind goes. So reassurance that you're with them, that you're in it with them. They have to do the work, but you're there to support them. That would be very helpful. And then our C styles, like my husband, right? They want details and they want logic. Adapting your feedback to their styles, to the style of communication that the preference of the other person, that's going to make the message land with care and clarity. So when you speak in the language of the other person's communication style, you are building relationships and your message will land, like they'll understand it. Okay, does that make sense? So for the bosses that are avoiding performance review conversations, prepare emotionally, like really understand, why is it that I avoid these things? Why is it that I hate these things? Two, I want you to add your message wrapped in grace. And three, I want you to pay attention to who the other person is on the DISC scale. Like, what type of communication style is their preferred style? You flex yours to theirs. Okay. Then finally, just as we kind of wrap here, handling challenges and resistance. So if an employee reacts defensively or emotionally, you need to stay grounded. Grace gives space for emotion. Salt keeps the conversation anchored in a purpose. Okay, so you're going to allow, right? Okay, they're going to get emotional. but you're going to stay calm, cool, and collected. And we're going to keep it grounded in behavior and not in personality. Does that make sense? All right. If it doesn't, then please comment somewhere and get this back to me so that I can do another podcast related to this. I want you to just as a sample or an example, I can tell this feedback is tough, right? So this is something that you could say. I can tell this feedback is tough, and I appreciate you being open to discussing it. So let's focus on what success looks like moving forward, right? That makes sense. Yeah, that's good. If they don't agree with your assessment, focus on specifics. Do not focus on personality. Facts reduce friction. So let's review a few examples. So we're looking at the same data. So this is why I think this, right? This is what happened. Do, and then lay out the facts and try to avoid the word you. I mean, I know you have to say you because it's their performance review, but it's really about the behavior that you're talking about because you is kind of like you're pointing the finger at them, and I don't want you to avoid the fact that it is they need to be accountable for whatever situation it is, but let's focus on the behavior and how we can improve that behavior, how we can strengthen that behavior, that type of thing. Okay, Grace and Salt coaching moment. So Grace says, I see your potential. Salt says, and I'll hold you accountable to reach it. The performance review isn't just a meeting, right? So let's just not think of it as a meeting that you put on your calendar every year and we dread it. No, it's a reflection of your leadership values. Do you choose avoidance or do you choose growth? Which do you choose for you and your team? All right, your action steps. So before your next performance review, take 20 minutes to prepare. Identify their wins, 3 areas of growth, and one question to ask your employee that sparks a conversation, not compliance. All right, because we want this to be a two-sided conversation. So let's do that again. I want you to identify 3 wins, 3 areas for growth, and one question to ask your employee that sparks conversation, not compliance. Okay, super. Thanks for hanging out with me on the top floor. I really appreciate it. If today's episode gave you something to think about, please share it with a leader that you admire and be sure to follow me wherever or subscribe, whether you're on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever you are watching this podcast. If you're ready to find your voice or you want to know a little bit more about my executive coaching programs, please reach out to me. You can always go to graceandsaltleadership.com to learn more. And remember, you do not have to lead like everyone else. You just have to lead like you. Thank you so much and have an absolute wonderful day. And I'll see you next. Thanks so much for hanging out on the top floor. If today's episode gave you something to think about or a little boost, share it with your friends to keep the momentum going. And hey, if you're ready to rise, find your voice, and lead with clarity and confidence, we'd love to connect with you. Reach out at graceandsaltleadership.com to learn how Grace and Salt can support your growth. Remember, you don't have to lead like everyone else. Just lead like you. All right, I'll see you next time on the top floor.